It was raining heavily, a car arrived, and a man and his security guard got out. He was met by other people and an escort who said he would accompany him. At first, the man's guards didn't realize what he was saying. After all, they are the guards of the Blue House, and the post accompanies its head. But the head was okay with him going alone, so told his guards to stay here. After walking for a while, two people were walking in the rain. The attendant remarked that it was raining hard on the way here today, but he still asked them to follow him. The boys came to see an unknown man who remarked that the air in the garden was just fine, and that's why he spends his time here, and he finds it very relaxing. He hailed the man Henson, the president, noted that lately he must have had a lot of reasons to be disappointed. That's why he decided to have their meeting in the garden. And he also hopes that Henson enjoys the peaceful atmosphere of the garden and can go home today. But in a moment, Henson bowed his head to the president of Purple Moon and told him that from now on the government would recognize Purple Moon. Will not take any more action, so he asked him to mobilize the elite to prevent an assassination attempt on him. The president of the moon has confirmed that he made the right choice. With the proposal of the current government he accepts, the president of the Crimson Moon accepts his proposal. Not some time later, we are transported to a boy who ran into a police station. He told the cops that gangsters were trying to kill him. Then one of the policemen asked him what happened. He also asked him to calm down. Back at the police station, a gangster came in and hit the kid for trying to turn them in. If he borrowed the money, he should have paid it back on time. And the place he ran to is this meager police station. The gangster spoke for the Purple Moon that there's no way they'd be scared of the cops. The car turned to Park, who was running, that he'd made a fine choice. The guy, of course, tried to justify himself and said that he had made a mistake and that he would give it all back in 2 days. But of course the gangster calculates it's a lie and started beating him up because he says the same thing he said a fortnight ago. The interest for being 3 months late is even more than the interest on the loan. Jenyuk asked for another chance, but he didn't want to and offered to pay with his body, and he wouldn't give up his Borg. Also, the gangster apologized for disturbing the policeman, and everyone was also okay with the whole thing after all. Yet the branch managers of the Crimson Moon do their own thing, and they're okay with that. The guys decided to leave, and before they left, they wished them a good evening. But at one point, a policeman stopped the boys. He took out his handcuffs and put them on the gangster, and said he was under arrest for being a branch manager. He's also under arrest for assault and blackmail. The man thought it was just a joke, and then started stroking the policeman's head. He asked him if the policeman was new, for he watches him with complete enthusiasm. The gangster turned to the general, spoilt how he raises his young, and who is this new guy to interfere? The general was immediately frightened and said he would teach him a lesson himself. He came closer and explained that this man was unusual. You can't do that, and to get him out of the handcuffs as quickly as possible. But the cop just told the gangster to give his left hand, so he could stab him in the cuffs. The gangster decided to punch the cop since he asked for a left-hand punch himself. It's the first time I've seen someone like him, and he's funny. The general tried to sell his subordinate that he was new here and didn't know anything yet. But the gangster told him to shut up, so he switched to the policeman and asked him what his problem was, because he's overflowing with a sense of justice. So he gets close to a policeman and asks him if anyone knows how this police station works, and the policeman better answer because he's ready to kill him now. If he didn't know, the gangster decided to repeat that he answered faster. He's a busy man. The policeman at one point stood up abruptly. He said that if the gangster resisted, he would have to use force. Gunster lands a left kick to the body. Then the policeman started to fall and the gangster decided to finish him off with his left hand. The gunster, during the beat, started asking the cop how dare he waste his time someone who was new to the case. A while later, the gangster was not happy because he had wasted a lot of energy. He also asked me to take off his handcuffs. The gangster also appealed to the general that he had better train his subordinates, or he would teach them a lesson next time. The general apologized for all this, and he would see to it and promised that such a thing would not happen again. The gangster then turned to the policeman who was lying down and told him that he would need at least 6 months to recover. But when the guys were just about to leave, one of the guys turned his head and saw the policeman stand up. No one around me understood how it was possible. A few months ago, patient's blood pressure was dropping. Of the 38 injured, more than 9 are fatal. If the guy can't take it, he'll bleed to death. His patient's heart started to stop. The doctor started to massage his heart and asked him to inject adrenaline 50 milligrams. Unexpectedly, the patient died. Back listened to the laughter of the doctor, who called it a nasty treasure. And there was someone with potential beyond the leader of the Crimson Moon. One of the people he buried was his wife and daughter, and soon enough, he would pay him for them. Then the other doctor asked him why he could laugh in such a situation. After all, the kid who needed his help had just died. He could have survived if he'd hurried. "Dr. Kingon," said the patient didn't die. Suddenly the guy who was just lying in bed got up. The doctor called him a zombie and ordered his assistants to extract all the blood from the patient. They must get him to a regular hospital before he regains consciousness. But first, the doctor was going to create a new drug that rejuvenates is given an attraction to regeneration. Back to present tense. Gunster flew straight out of the station. Then a man in a hoodie came up to the gangster and remarked that it must be quite fun. The more you beat him, the stronger he would get. Was that an interesting rumor? Police officers are perplexed as to how the guy came the norm for a couple of days and one day he just went, I think, not despite being farted on 8 times. Then the chief turned to Rui. It was lunchtime, so he asked him to join him. Already at the table, the boss said he was sorry. After all, such a well as he taught a lesson by a gangster. No, older, standing, and Nemanja did nothing out of fear. But Rui realized that the guys had families, and also the chief asked him to understand. These people are not unusual people, so just hearing about the hog moon gave the chief goosebumps. Already in the evening, a gang of several men came again to the police station. One of the main gangsters ordered all the guys to destroy everything around them. The bandits started killing all the cops they saw. But at one point, Rui fought back from that guy. He also told his boss that if he wanted to live, he should run away. Then Gangster turned to Park. He was glad of the meeting, and told him it was his last day. Last time he got frustrated, but that wouldn't happen today, he promised. The gangster promised he'd kill the cop. He decided to teach him a good lesson, so what he did was lick his knife, and he grinned at the cop. Rui didn't wait and immediately threw himself at the bandits. One by one, he hit each member of their gang. The policeman wondered if he realized he was in trouble. But he wondered if his body was changing because he had recently gained weight and realized that he would be beaten here. One of the guys still managed to find a wound in an important organ of the policeman, but he didn't even show his face. Then the whole thing was observed by a man in the course of it. He realized he shouldn't get involved, so what? The policeman had to be cornered to hate the purple moon even more. He realized that the policeman was as awful as he was. He thought it was all pretty good. The people around had already grabbed the policeman and pinned him to the ground. The policeman was not really a policeman in a living place. The gangster himself grabbed the chief of the Rui. Gangster started to explain that because of him, all these innocent people lost their lives. Everything and everyone happened because he got in over his head. The policeman realized that their general was single-handedly raising his family with a 7-year-old daughter after the death of his wife. But the policeman realized that they had only come for him, and so he asked the general to be released. Gonzera explained that it would be his turn. They came here to kill everything, and first of all, he would be the last. The policeman just screamed with anger, and his body was filled with anger. He promised he'd kill the bandit. The gangster himself looked at the policeman, seemingly subordinate to keep him Krivichi. He'll get rid of the jerk himself. Only the guy swung the knife. A dead body flew past the guys. There was already a man in a hoodie standing behind the gangster. This man scattered all the bandits in an instant. Couldn't believe such absurd things herself, so she lunged with the knife at the unknown man. But John Doe grabbed the knife with his hand, and just broke it. The unknown man didn't understand the point of all this killing, and why someone like him should live. Unknown. Then threw the gangster off with one punch. Then the unknown turned his gaze to the policeman. He could not believe that he was mistaken, for he had certainly heard that the more you beat a policeman, the stronger he becomes. But he drives like a nightmare. Didn't realize what a disappointment that was. An unidentified man took a policeman to the hospital. He realized that he basically didn't care if the policeman died. But even if there were too many enemies, he couldn't handle the lowliest and the leaders of the Purple Moon. With such strength, the unknown man didn't know if Rui could handle Shinyong. A few days ago, Carmin nicknamed Poisonous Han first-class murder, killing 8 people about 10 years ago. After all the crime he committed, he did not repent, but said that he had killed demons, which must die by sentencing them to death. He was to be executed today. There was a pill in front of him, and the doctor who said he ate the pill. The killer realized that each time the ways got worse first they used the electric chair, or even in the form of poison, but now a pill. He realized it wasn't like he was going to die anyway. After all, the guy was tired of dealing with the Purple Moon killers, so he decided to just die. After he popped the pill, he felt a great pain. After that, his body changed. Shinyong isn't the same as he was 10 years ago. It matters how strong he is, unless he's with Ryu Shihuan. Even if all the 4th-generation villains attack together, not a single tray will fall off this monster's head. The guy didn't realize what the hell it was about. He had fully recovered, so he didn't realize what kind of case it was. He's a poisonous Hun, and with this body he drove Shin Yan to his death 10 years ago. The very head of the Purple Moon at his garden drank the chat, and himself swept up the flavor of the tea was lovely. Like a flavor that becomes more intense, he feels the achievements of his servants gaining in greater depth. A reliable cup of tea by the pond in the rain. Is it possible to be so luxurious in this world? A man didn't realize. Watch Theon, who didn't realize what kind of tea and lightning was going on. It doesn't suit him at all. The guy himself broke through security and was out of sight the whole time. So the boys were very curious what kind of expression he would have when the president noticed him. And right after that, the president cast his gaze on the greenhouse, but he saw nothing there. The president decided to use his aura, and when he couldn't breathe, he realized that this wasn't the Shin-Young he knew. Only wanted to go beyond the ability to anchor the body. At this stage, he's capable of releasing that power outward. It was dangerous. If he doesn't escape, he'll die for sure. The president was asked what happened, but he just smiled and said it was no big deal. For a moment, he caught the energy of the poisonous honorable being sentenced to death. There was no way he could walk around freely. The president then asked if the director had heard about the villains of the generation. The director confirmed what he heard. After all, before the president united the night world, he had heard that there were some incredibly capable people who surpassed their generation. Like the president himself, such people were talented. The president said he was almost killed when the boys banded together for this purpose, if he hadn't separated them from his 4 enemies. Guys, I bet he was dead then and the purple moon wouldn't exist. That's why once he defeated them, he shredded them so that they could never recover again. Poison Han, at one point in the rain, began to age. He cursed the doctor who didn't tell him about this side effect. Poison Han came to see the doctor. After that, the guy went to the doctor with the fact that he had discovered that he could grow old at any time. The doctor didn't understand what the guy was talking about, and why he should do it at all, because the guy himself asked, so he didn't tell. When the bloke took to pinning the doctor to the table, the doctor explained that the new drug is still stable. He would have to keep taking it to stay young. But the kid realized that as long as the doctor used the drugs on him, and that's the end of it, he'd just turn into a job. Just as Hong threatened to kill the doctor, another man appeared behind him, a light demon. The guy himself woke up with a vegetative state. And after that, he immediately lunged at her poisonous on him. Suddenly, the Seihan fought back against the guy and hit him with a hand to the stomach. But because the drug was weakening, its potency was gone. So the light demon pressed down to the ground again. The next morning, in the hospital sat Rin, who was giving some to his fellow soldiers. The people around him didn't even realize how he had stayed. He had been wounded several times, but he had been out of hospital for only a week. At that time, the policeman was already sitting outside the cafe, meaning the poisonous Han was sitting nearby. We listened to the news on the telly, which discussed what happened last night, and that there had been a murder in Neighborhood D. And the man who was suspected of this was released as soon as the investigation was completed. Minor Crimson Moon in District D was under oath for several days. He was released after his alibi checked out. The general's daughter appeared and asked for him back, but she was crying. She blamed the only policeman who was left because his father was dead, that he should take responsibility for himself. The girl asked me to catch them all, which made the policeman realize that he had to kill them all with his own hands. Then on his way out of the cafe, he met a poisonous Anyo who noticed they were in front of the meeting. At first, Rin didn't recognize the guy, but the one who reminded him that he'd saved his life past the night only the end of the suction cup remembered. The policeman said he would thank the guy later in the video today. Poison Hong asked the guy where he was going in such a hurry. After all, he himself knows that he can't wait to punch the manager of the organization, but he guarantees it. That if he went in there now, he'd be in trouble. The cop didn't care. He said to let him go. And if the bloke got in his way, never mind that he saved his life, he wouldn't stand idly by. Then Poison Han Clashing Eye lunged at the guy. What was even surprised to see, he didn't even notice his movement. Poison Hong promised that as soon as the suckers carry him a single blow, then that one would get off his back, and even help him get rid of the organization's manager, Bogrova Moon. The policeman warned the bloke to go over there, but if he didn't, the Rin wouldn't stop. Then the policeman made a lunge which the poisonous Han dodged. Then the guy was struck by the rumor, though, of a policeman, when the policeman was already holding. Poison Han began to explain his problem. He is mistaken if he thinks he is going to get hit, for the more he gets hit, the stronger he becomes. Because of this stupid idea that it's okay to get killed, he won't be able to hit his opponent, even an idiot. Poison Han called the buccaneer pathetic, didn't understand what the doctor found in him. The policeman didn't want for you and tried to throw punch after punch. Only Han wanted to swing the punch again, he concluded, after which the policeman wanted his hand. After all, it was a trick. God, the policeman kicked. Hong collapsed in pain. Introverted bit down, and because of it. The policeman managed to surprise the guy. iTunes at first thought he was just a stupid man who only knows how to wave his hands. Turns out he can think. As the guy himself said, after he gets hit by a Plycian at least once, someone will leave here. That's what the policeman reminded him of in his dream. But Poison Hong said she just wouldn't let go of him, and it was best for him to prepare a little, before. I'd be sitting in my flat celebrating a job well done, with his boys. Actually, Chinese food tastes even better. Guy's not arrested for killing 4 cops, he understood how to live in this world. The boss was also asked if there was any power in this country that could influence the purple moon. That's right, the manager confirmed. Unless you're fearless, it won't happen. He also asked what happened to the last cop left. It was the first time the manager had ever seen a hit that bad. At that moment, he really thought he was going to die. The kid couldn't believe that guy had the power of their president. Glia power. Suddenly the lads listened to the blows, after which they did not return and looked on the other side. It was a policeman who burst into their room. He said he was going to beat up the manager today. Of course, I don't understand how he's still alive. And he's a regular cop. How can he walk around like that without a scratch? Then he ordered his guys to just kill him. One backwards hypocritical scum of everyone. Behind the policeman was the poisonous Hong who called him unfunny. But still, this kid, even if tormented like a fish, is still able to listen. He skillfully took him out with one punch. The manager didn't understand how a policeman could look down on him, so he pulled out his brass knuckles and hit the cop with a ring. Noski just lapped up his punch, and before delivering a crushing blow to the manager, he said that before the general said hi to him. After hitting the policeman, he flew straight into the window and then smashed it and flew away. Then later, the superintendent showed up, and other guys also gathered around and started beating up the policeman. The manager turned to the manager and didn't understand how he could lose to such a brat, so he ordered him to get out of his sight. When the guy fell from my floor, people ran up to him and started asking him if he was hiding. Then the manager got up and went to the manager's office. And through the cameras they watched as the policeman changed again and started running all the people down. The manager didn't realize who this guy was. He's growing up right in front of his eyes. Even before that, the manager started to run, and it was noticed by the policeman, and also by the poisonous Han. They too guessed that they should praise him. But suddenly, the policeman questioned Poison Han why he was talking this way. Poison Han In tried to explain that he is senior to him by 20 years. The policeman didn't realize how it was possible because it was like he was his age. But the guys realized they needed to put that point down. Poison Han realized that the policeman is not so simple. He turns out to be a real zombie. It's interesting after all that. He's still okay. Poison Han informed the police officer that it seems the manager rushed to Park Insu to the manager of the Purple Moon in District X and the regional manager of the Red Moon classes. And also there is an Alpha class talent Glia. Of course the police press asked what it was. The guy said that he should in no way know about it. All the administrators above the regional superintendent are Glia masters. Park Sense is the biggest of them all. Even so, his skills are not enough. The manager had already run to the manager. He didn't understand how he came running here after being beaten up by a neighborhood policeman. Of course the manager didn't want to believe it. Just a cop. The manager tried to explain that he wasn't just a cop. He stabbed him several times, but he didn't have a scratch on him. He's a real monster. After which he was kicked. The manager called his subordinate a piece of shit. Spot told him he would kill him if he got in trouble. That's the day he beat someone to death and made the situation worse. That's why they should appoint masters like him as admins. The manager called the secretary and asked for all participants to be called. The guys decided to go to Sector D to take care of this policeman. But their gaze was drawn to the policeman himself, who had already fought other members of the organization. The people around him wrapped their arms around the policeman, but he did not let up and broke free from the grip. He started fighting with one backhand. He was hitting guys, and then he gave everyone a poisonous honk. Look at this guy, was shocked at how he hits first and doesn't wait for others to hit. Looks like he can fight without changing a bit. But you could look at this wheel creature activating inescapable energy. The organization sat at computers. Suddenly the issue appeared a red light. It was cat red. All staff were ordered to stop and greet all visitors. A policeman sat in front of a crowd of thugs and ordered them all to leave. They did not listen and rushed at him with weapons. After that, the guys got even angrier and started beating them. The managing manager didn't understand where this guy came from, and his body also waved, then swelled, and it was abnormal. The manager couldn't believe that this policeman also had glium. Later, the poisonous Han asked the policeman what he was doing, for not long ago he had been fighting and now he could hardly stand on his feet. Then he asked him why he shouldn't imagine going round and round and go home. But the cop wasn't ready to go home to kill that guy. When Poison Han said that the policeman had already reached his limit a long time ago, he'll die if he keeps going. But the poisonous Han couldn't stop the policeman, and for the last time told him that if he wanted to go to his grave, he wouldn't stop him. The policeman called the lift. There's a few more people he knocked out from there. Then when he got out of the lift, he was met by the manager and a few other people. The first thing the manager said was how a guy like that could make such a mess. The policeman asked who was standing in front of him now. The guy called the name Pak, and he's the head of the neighborhood X. The policeman's letter that he's going to let him go. Then the leader became and told me that he liked to live a normal life. Well, for some reason the cop starts pissing him off, after which he stabs Rin. The supervisor noticed that the policeman was acting as if he was an advanced user, started beating him up even more. The manager decided to show him how to forever, caught between the purple moon and the common folk. Yes, the policeman fell to the floor. The supervisor was sure the policeman wouldn't get up again. But a venomous honk approached the boys from behind. Poison Han looked at Rin and was disappointed. Again, no matter how stubborn he was, he can't endlessly get up again and again. Poison remembered that the doctor told him if the policeman died, he'd stop treatment. Then the supervisor got angry and wanted to hit the kid, but after the collision of the two hands, the supervisor's arm broke. Then the manager asked the guy who he really was. He got punched in the face in response. He couldn't believe that anyone would be stronger than the Scarlet Moon. The manager approached the superintendent and asked the order. He and all the other wards started to run away. The manager couldn't have thought the manager would be overpowered. He bowed his head to the poisonous Hun and asked not to shoot them down again and leave them be. He asks for nothing more than that. Replied that it wasn't even his revenge. He had no reason to beat him up. Just when the manager thought he was saved, the cop started to get up. The guys started beating on each other. In the end, there should have been only one person left. It was the poisonous Hane. The manager was ready to surrender, but the policeman wouldn't listen and bit his ear. He bit it off. With the next blow, he pinned the manager to the floor and started beating him up. Only the poison Han could restore him, because the guy was already dead, and also congratulated him on his first kill. Later, the policeman just passed out. Poison Hong realized that tomorrow's election moon would be a chaos, especially if the Shin is aware of their existence. They would become his targets. We are led to the director of the Crimson Moon. He ordered his two subordinates to look there and the others elsewhere, and expectedly, they didn't notice the mountain of corpses. The man did not realize how they laughed from such a raw purple moon, and ordered his boys to say this, and above. The guys arrived at the top floor and saw the manager. After that, the director approached him and asked him what had happened to him. The director asked what kind of organization dared to attack the purple moon. The manager explained that there were only two. The manager explained that there were only two people with a Tartour. But the only thing the manager said was that two people were advanced users, and one of them was a neighborhood cop. Then the director turned his attention past the manager and said he was dead, because he's not breathing anymore. First, they had to get rid of all the bodies from the buildings. That's when he was asked if he should first pass the information on to the general staff. The director looked at his subordinate with a murderous look because something terrible has happened in this territory that he manages, and he can't lend it to his head. If he doesn't want to fight, you'll watch your language. Suddenly the manager woke up and started breathing. Already in the hospital, the guys looked at the manager who was lying in bed. The director told the doctor that he was sure the guy was dead, but he was alive. The doctor himself wondered how it happened. But if he wanted to know so badly, he'd look at one place. The screen showed the guy had 1,000,000,000 glia, and it turns out he may now be retained with the manager himself. The doctor explained that it was all the oblodra of his efforts that had suddenly grown. The doctor also explained that glia can be completely detected in different shapes. It depends on a person's build. We still have to catch the attackers alive, report to the General Assembly before anyone notices. Also, the director can dodge responsibility. The director decided to remove the mask from the manager. He was sure he'd stay alive. So he woke him up and asked him what kind of people had come and done this. I woke up abruptly, and he said he'd be ready to kill those people. People wondered how a man who had just been dead could be like that. The manager called the policeman's name. The director then knocked him out with one punch. Well, the director explained that it's also that after a man gets the ability and so they send a general assembly, that's where he trains for free. Some stay there because of the delay in their salary. The director has ordered the doctor to tie this man up. He's going to look for a policeman. The guy himself was lying on his bed at home. He remembered everything that had happened last night. Why did he wake up abruptly? Two men sat next to him and the one he already knew. Poison Khan called the policeman names and said that he saved his husband and him, that's why he's here at his house. The policeman decided to join the meal, but the poisonous Han explained that there was not enough food for everyone. Didn't realize how he watched such says ramen trains outside his house. Then Han pointed to his light demon companion. He too had eaten food, so there was none left. The policeman called the boys' names. Then the light demon looked at him and asked him how he dared to treat his elders so disrespectfully. The suckers were of course surprised, for they looked like peers. Then he asked why they kept paying around him. Then the light demon warned him that in that no thought on the question, the advice would now get slapped in the face. Of course, the policeman wouldn't listen and told them to keep answering his questions. Then he didn't even have time to react before he was grabbed by his face and pinned to the ground. The policeman followed the logical question for him as to why he was so strong. For him to bring tears, they realized he was being washed, very much so. And the guy was sure that he too is a user of this ability. But even so, his ability wasn't enough to defeat the pack. Just because two guys guard and mentor a cop, and that means he can keep up with the purple moon and not die. The policeman didn't see the point of it because he'd had his revenge. Poison Han explained that he would have to fight the moon for the rest of his life. Vitya, you've challenged them, you can't get away from them. Also, if it turns out he was an advanced user, he'll become a member of the side moon, or have to wait forever for the backlash. That's why he has to make a responsible decision. At one point, the policeman once more fanned a letter from the Gwangma scrum. Well, Poison Han explained that you don't have to do that, and you don't have to try to show off your powers in front of someone like him. Poison Hong reminded his friend that he didn't report back. Gwangma that it was a funny business that he had involved him in. Why did you guys suddenly decide to fight? The guys stopped in an instant because they didn't feel anything strange. Poison Han swept that whether he thought he was selling a lot more time before they found the trail after killing the manager. The director stood outside and ordered his boys not to kill the policeman. He had to be brought in safely. All of us together began to take action, but unexpected they were met by two men. Poison Han said that these guys are probably weak, and his friend said he wouldn't lose a hair in a fight. Guangmi threw with him first, and started throwing people around. Suddenly the principal himself appeared and kicked the guy. The first thing the principal did was ask the guy if he was the one who such a neighborhood X. Poison Han was also watching everything. He didn't realize what it was just now, and from the looks of it, he is a beta-level user. But he wondered if this level was strong enough to repel Guangma. The headmaster himself said he'd kill them right now if he challenged the purple moon. But Guangmu wouldn't listen, so he suddenly struck. The director barely had time to dodge. This principal flew off and she was asked if he was okay. The headmaster started laughing with the boys because he knew that strength wasn't everything. He's good enough to show them his skills. Principal and started fighting. Poison Han was also watching and discussing the battle. He didn't understand did the members of the Purple Moons pump up their skills. And even if they did, they couldn't compare to Guangma. Suddenly, the poisonous Hona began to shake the timeline. It had only been 5 days, but for some reason his body began to deteriorate. The boys decided to run away. The boys decided to leave the policeman behind because they had to think of themselves. The principal came running to the boys and saw a policeman. The cop's not at his best, but was able to say that the boys were out of here now. When the principal asked what the guy said, he didn't wait and threw it at the principal. The director was surprised because it was immediately obvious to the naked eye that the policeman was not feeling well. His body is not in good condition. I recognized his silly and cute attempts at punching were even amusing. He decided to start attacking the guy as well. After a direct hit to the head, the policeman collapsed. The director decided to leave, but also that before he did, he ordered his subordinates to find the other two men, who had escaped. A policeman dreamed his superior was being murdered. The boys woke up in the room. The principal asked the policeman if he had had a good night's sleep. After a silently happy reply, the principal kicked the guy. The principal found it amusing that the guy would swell up after the blows. The doctor believed that the guy, besides making a quick recovery, he uses his glia to strengthen his body during an emergency. In the manager's case, he made a full recovery after he died. The policeman was surprised that the guy was alive. Well, right up front was the shackled manager. It was already night when the guards turned their heads and saw the Guangma. After that, the guards were all damaged, but the guys didn't look so good. Look at how bad they were before the drug was introduced. Maybe it's a side effect of the sudden physical change. But either way, Poison Hone won't let the doctor get away with it. Already before morning sat in my office, I looked at the picture of his wife and daughter. He pointed the gun at his head. He recalled the day he asked him to kill his daughter and wife. He was sure he was wrong. And he said he'd do anything to visit his wife and daughter. That was President Crimson Moon's. The man replied that he had already told the doctor that they had asked him several times to withdraw the lawsuit. Because of his selfish desire, the share price of the Crimson Moon Pharmacist Recruitment Company in which they had invested plummeted, and they lost a huge amount of money. Since he had inflicted a huge damage on the Scarlet Moon, then he had to be punished, though not as much. He gave him a choice. If he wants to save his wife or his daughter, he'll give him 3 seconds. 3 seconds went by and the guy's killed. The boys went to see the doctor. They took the gun because if he dies, they can take the drug. The doctor warned the guys that if they use the force to its fullest effect, the medicine and dry out faster. There are limits to this elixir of youth after all. Then the doctor asked where the policeman was. Poison Han replied that he had been taken away by the purple moon. The doctor ordered him to bring it back immediately. Without it, he can't make the cure, and they won't have a chance to catch the president of the Crimson Moon. Yes, the poisonous Han told the doctor to prepare more medicine. Vitya won't bring the policeman back. Already a policeman was fighting with the manager. They exchanged blows. The forces were evenly matched. The doctor and the director were watching. The doctor had no idea what was going on. It all depends on how they show up. That will show who wins and who loses. The manager could defuse all the policeman's movements. You're his prize, feeling as if all his nerve endings woke up from their sleep again. That's not the perception of a policeman. And it seems that the manager felt great power and was sure that he would beat everyone. The policeman realized that the guy had definitely changed since last time he didn't understand where he got his strength from. But even if he remained un-Russian, he couldn't be defeated by a guy like him. The policeman fulfilled the words of the poisonous Han who said he was nothing. If he continued to interrupt his user potential, the Harrow would crush him like a bug. The policeman was already lying on the floor. The manager grabbed him by the head, said the guy beat his face up pretty good last time. So he decided to pay him back. The director ordered it to stop and appointed a winner. He was delighted with the battle. But the manager drew his head back and looked menacingly at the director. The director was outraged at this way of looking at him. So he told the manager to bow his head if he didn't want to die. The manager apologized to the director. He got carried away and couldn't do anything. The director's right, and it happens when the fight's in full swing, but that doesn't give him the right to cross the line. Then I warned him that if he looked at it again, he'd die. The manager promised that it would definitely be listened to. A white snake appeared and asked the director for some amusement. He was curious himself. The white snake began to wonder why the principal didn't even salute him. He apologized and asked what the white snake was doing here. The only thing White Snake asked was what kind of person was behind the principal. White Snake once again asked the question, who was the guy sitting next to the principal? The director replied that it was a new user. When White Snake ordered 2 guys to hang out, you're the car, since it's customary for new recruits to go to the island for a survival test. I realized he was a complete arsehole, but there's a major will tell you you're redundant, then they can find out what happened around X. The White Snake explained that the reason he had come was because of the 4 great fiends. They are the first and last generation of villainy to sow panic, and the president will never forget what he had to ask them to go through. And he suspected that the 4 great villains had resumed their activities. The director asked a logical question. Had the head not dealt with them? To which he received an affirmative answer. After all, their leader Conman prisoner on death row, and the bright demon is in a coma. God's Way and Bright Shining are currently disabled. After another check, it turned out that the Cammin was dead. The only ones left are Bakshin and Sojin, and it seems God's Way he was under the director's control. The director assured me that she was under his control, not just in body but in soul. If there's an intruder in the way, Shinto will be the first to tell him everything. Lastly, the White Snake asked to send a report on the girl. If there were any problems with her, it wouldn't even be worth dreaming of a promotion. A policeman woke up on an island. Didn't know where he was. The last thing he realized was that he'd been hit, and he fainted. A policeman came out of hiding. Then he saw a man who was running at him. The policeman, of course, didn't understand why he was hit. The unknown man explained that this island is called Musang Island, and it's a survival training ground for new users of the Scarlet Moon ability. The policeman then asked the logical question of how he got here. The unknown man did not know how the policeman himself got to this place, but he decided to hit him. I mean, he needed to know that information if he was going to die. The policeman was able to walk away from the blow. He realized that this man was about to be killed in a lengthy survival training exercise. He didn't understand how people could be brought here to kill each other. The policeman realized that he had to beat up the man to find out what this place was. When the guy wanted to attack again, the policeman was able to intercept his leg and throw him over himself. When the guy was already standing with a bloody nose, the policeman came up to him and said he now wanted to know information. A little later, the policeman learnt the information. He realized that this was a place for survival training for the wielders of the Purple Moon's power. It was a disgusting place for him. He realized he had to get out of here. The policeman's friend met an old man whose back was hurting. "Police officers, how can we get away from here?" The old man lived on this island. The old man explained that this is the island where people are deprived of their sanity, and after that, he immediately threw the thing at the policeman. "This island is made for polished duck because people here kill each other." That's what he said. The man pulled out a knife and stabbed the policeman with it. He also said he couldn't trust anyone on this one. But after a few seconds, the old woman realized that the policeman was not dying but already in storage. After which he received a severe blow to the face. The policeman approached a man who appeared to be younger than he was at first glance. He was a power user, who could change his appearance to that of an old man. President Crimson Moon was watching. He noticed that there were a lot more participants on the training field. There were as many as 12 of them. Then the manager climbed the cliff to see the island from a high vantage point. He thought he could rest now, but suddenly, and his response nullified one man. He remarked that he thought he had almost killed them all, but apparently there was one survivor like him. The manager asked why the man was a corpse. He explained that the whole force had no one to compare it to, so he made it when he was bored. White Snake has named a very special contestant. His name is Pak. At the last test, he beat up all the contestants, after which they ended up in the hospital. He's a maniac, obsessed with repeating the test and saying that the island suits him best. The president himself said it was a long time before he found something worthwhile. Puck lunged at the manager. Second tried to throw a punch, but Puck intercepted it. Well, Puck was able to ditch the guy, and the next thing he knew, he was jumping on him. Then the pack grabbed the guy, and the guy asked how it felt to have the life in his body slowly fading away. Well, I wondered how the manager felt. The guy was disappointed that the manager died quickly. There was a lot of talk, so he got his head right faster than he thought. But it was his own fault, because he had to go. That the manager died was a confirmation on the president's screen. Suddenly the manager lunged at Pak with a rock. Due to a blow to the head with a rock, the steam couldn't move. The president was surprised that the guy survived, and became even stronger after that. Then he asked to be reminded of the guy's full name. It was explained to him that he was a manager in District D. The manager threw the corpse out of the mountain. He saw the policeman himself climbing it. The policeman replied that he himself was very glad to meet them. The manager realized that each time you policed, you were getting more and more frightened. The guys decided to start fighting. The policeman missed the first punch. And the manager said he may have been weak before, but he's stronger now. And a bastard like a policeman, they're uneven. The cop took blow after blow, and he noticed that the kid had gotten faster and stronger since their last time. And at the rate he was giving him, he needed to adapt. He remembered the words of the poisonous Hun, that the policeman should strike first. But if it's not a failure, he should pounce as hard as he can for the ear defense's attack. When the cop stabbed the guy hard and said he had no idea how he survived, but tonight, the cop's gonna make sure the guy dies for good. And I still didn't realize all the manager had to do was kill him. But he killed innocent people, including the chief. And all the officers, too. The guy laughed out loud at that. And he told me that he'd suspected something was wrong with him before, but the cop is seriously pursuing him for that reason alone, and also explained that the Crimson Moon doesn't need a reason to kill. The policeman then advised the lad to keep his mouth shut. Then he started hitting the policeman, but something was wrong. The policeman didn't care about the blows. And after a series of punches, the cop hit the guy so hard that he took off. Before the final blow was delivered, the policeman froze, and he stood puzzled as to why this was so. It was the president of the Moonspawn who said that the child the policeman wants to kill is the property of the explorer. He can't kill it. The policeman wondered awake what kind of man stood before him. But he noticed that he was different from those he had fought before. Such insolence, the president took even more of his power. And the guy's body began to fall, and she became heavier and heavier. The president's advice was that the guy didn't even try to move, or he spent his muscles. He should just rest and think about life. The policeman wouldn't listen and tried to stand up. But suddenly there was a huge pain in my muscles. But by some miracle, the cops managed to escape control, which left everyone bewildered. Afterwards, a policeman pounced on the president. Now the president himself was at a loss, and the policeman only needed a manager. The president noticed that the guy was not a shy guy. A white kite was already running behind the policeman, but he was immediately ordered by the president not to try to help. The president began to ponder your fate as the guy uses glitch. He is clearly a novice. However, he didn't realize what kind of power it is. He clearly has limitless potential. Then the president said enough is enough. After all, they had played and they had to stop. The cop only wanted the manager, but at one point the president just grabbed the guy's arms that were around his neck and threw them away, also noting that the cop picked the wrong opponent. And he still has a long way to go. Alone for nothing, the president threw the cop to sleep. Then the president asked his aide what the child's name was. It was explained to him that it was Ru Shiwa. The president understandably didn't understand that, but it was explained to him that the boy was a member of the Crimson Moon. The president also asked what this man would do here, but it was explained that the vice president of the Western District brought both him and the managers. He told him he was a newcomer, and then the White Snake brought him here. The president then ordered him to bring him to the general meeting as soon as they returned. After all, he needs a detailed report on these two guys. Suddenly, the president noticed someone's aura and asked who was here. They turned out to be old acquaintances. The president was shocked at how the two boys survived and why they'd changed. They were asking for the president at the same moment, but he easily dodged the blows. He noticed from the way they moved that it was really them. But they seemed to be different only on the outside. The first to fly off was the white demon, and the second is a poisonous Han. Then the president asked the poisonous Han far away. The president approached the poisonous Khan and asked him how they ended up here and found him. The president had a lot of questions for the guys. For example, how they managed to survive and who was involved. The guys decided to attack the president again. He thought it was a stupid decision, no, as open books. As they coordinate their attacks, it's easy to read. But suddenly the president was grabbed from behind by a policeman. He was clearly not expecting that. Lastly, the president said he wanted to take a policeman of his potential, but apparently it wasn't fate. With one flick of his hand, he tossed the policeman. The rest of the guys also flew off. The policeman didn't understand how this was possible. The president didn't understand how the guys stayed alive, but he was disappointed and also ashamed of how weak they had become, or maybe he had even become stronger. But the fact remained, there was no way they could beat him. The white demon decided to attack the president because he was angry, but he got hit by a white snake. White Snake asked permission to deal with the boys. He decided to examine the boys to see if they were worthy of their reputation. Only the white demon wanted to find the punch the guy easily returned. The president asked the Poison Han why they didn't run away when they had the chance. After all, it's rather unfortunate. But since they had decided to prove themselves, he would definitely not let them escape alive now. The guys started fighting, but the president for debt issues looked for the guy plans to finish him off if she has such weak strength. Poison Han realized he was going to get hit, and the president dodges all of his. At this rate, he won't lay a finger on him. But the most important thing now was not the president, but to save the policeman. Nor can a white demon be compared to a white snake. A hit to the chest caused the poisonous Han to freeze. The president sat down and said she had a lot of questions, but he thought he'd get over his curiosity somehow. In front of the final blow, the policeman appeared again and decided to strike the president, which he did. The poisonous Han could move again. Because of this blow to the president, the white snake was distracted and got hit with a stick. The boys decided to all run away together. Finally, the president said he had to meet with the director of District X. He was the reason they brought in the policeman. Already later, the president and also his aide were walking and were met by their supporters. The president remarked that he didn't like such formalities, for which the white snake apologized to him. Then from the man with the knife. Around the guys did not understand how he dared to approach the representative with a knife. The white snake ordered the guys to spin the guy with the knife, but the president said he didn't have to do that, so he went up to him and asked him what he wanted him to do. The guy explained that his whole family was on the street because of the Scarlet Moon, and all because of the interest rate they raised nothing. He had nothing to lose anymore. If he killed him, he would be doing others a favor. Responded that he was sorry that their client was extremely upset. The guy thought his debt was going to be cleared. But the president upset him with the news something misunderstood him. He was sorry that they made it seem as if everyone could blame them for their troubles. After all, they never asked to borrow from them. All they have is a loan. The guy should realize that the interest can go up with delinquency. And by the way, the guy with the knife obviously forged his relatives' signatures. The president knew the guy wasn't even going to pay the money back. He thinks that if he files bankruptcy, the problem will solve itself. Or if he took the money, he was thinking of running away. But in the end, he has what he has. People like him, and they're all over the world looking to get every last bit of it out of them. And when they pay back the debt, people at the end of it maybe turn on their heads and start being afraid of the moon and other people's money. So we should listen and remember. He should sell himself or his family for organs, but stop blaming others for his troubles and do everything possible to repay them. The guy didn't want to listen and wanted to just throw himself at the president, but he stopped him with his ability too. Whereupon the guy froze and exploded. Also, the president ordered his subordinates to make sure there's nothing left of this guy's family. The guys were already in the car. President started talking about the 4 loonies. White Snake had heard that it was the government that had given them that name, mostly because of their vortic behavior. The president noticed that they are cruel people declaring war on them. They attacked several of their branches, and no one was left alive. But what made their case truly terrifying was not their brutality, but their tenacity to never give up. If they got their hands on something, they would not let go until the end. Maybe that is why they never failed and rightfully established themselves as kings. In the end, the war between them grew into something more, and what its outcome would be only fate knows. 20 years ago, guys were killing everyone around them. Poison Hoon has surmised that they're finally going to see the chairman. The chairman noticed that the guys even killed those who didn't fight back, and they weren't called lunatics for nothing. He'd never thought he'd have to fight over territory with them. The boys decided to fight. He had noticed that if they acted together, they could overcome any obstacle. The first punch threw him too. Then the president wanted to dump on him right away, but I set myself up as a white demon. Then 2 others joined in, and the whole president started fighting. It was a protracted battle. The persistence and recklessness of the 4 lunatics was so unfathomable that the president felt goosebumps just from their venomous presence alone. And eventually the battle was over that the president had exhausted everyone. Poison Han asked the president if he was going to give up. He was holding up well, but they were still outnumbered. The president asked which of all 4 of them would be his replacement, because his appearance was conducted by Nevers with 4 zones. But then he merged them into one. So he asked for an answer as to who would rule them all after him, and will be the only penultimate leader. At that time, an incredible amount of money flowed out at the tray of the city. It could be said that having enjoyed the privilege just once, one would never want to put down such profiteering. In essence, the present used their greed against themselves as their final move. Han and the White Demon began to use the area. Ruling a certain part of the city could never die their hunger fulfillment. They must not have realized it. And greed made itself known at such a moment, as soon as the opportunity to become the sole ruler of the city arose. The guys started fighting amongst themselves. While the 2 were busy, the president turned his attention to the other 2. This bloke, he had his own leg and the girl wanted it by the throat. He noticed that the 2 guys who were fighting made a big mistake, because he was about to break their friend's neck. Only the White Demon wanted to attack him. The president touched him all the way through. Poison Han, despite his girlfriend being captured, and his friends were killed, he decided to escape, and that's how the Tarpaulin was able to win the battle, because he was able to create a rift between them. Even though those days had happened long ago, their poisonous aura was still frightening, and now they had chosen to use the prince as the key to achieving their goal. It was impossible to describe in words how incredible he had fought on the island. What the president wondered if their next meeting would lead to something more. We're already being brought to the present where 2 guys could barely get away from the president. That the guys were impressed that the princesses could get the president. There was a couple driving in a car. The guy suggested they look at the ocean, and the girl agreed to it. Suddenly, a white demon appeared in front of the guys who were traveling at a great speed. The guys got into the car, then they were asked the logical question of what they would do here. But the white demon offered such a good deal. If the guys would take them where they needed to go, then he wouldn't make a report on them that he didn't shoot them down. So the guys went to the doctor, who looked at them and was very pleased. He realized that the boys had had it rough with her. On the island, Poison Han confirmed it was the president who almost got them killed. Who was surprised at my guys after meeting him? But Poison Hn explained that it was because of the policemen that they couldn't get out of there. The doctor started laughing, and now the boys have realized the value of a policeman, and they're going to beat the president. Poison Han didn't understand why the policeman couldn't stop now. After all, he had been stabbed numerous times before, and now he can't recover. The doctor explained that it's very obvious, because the president isn't called a monster for nothing. Now his future isn't so bright. The doctor also explained that even a doctor couldn't handle it, but he had an idea. The policeman was placed in a cell. Then the doctor was asked what it was. He explained that it was some sort of decompressions of the camera. Diver needs to breathe high-pressure gas to increase the internal pressure in the body, so rather than cannot withstand the water pressure of deep diving. The room is filled with high-pressure gas, called a decompression chamber. The only difference would be that the room is made of bulletproof glass. Then the doctor was asked why he'd put the policeman there, and he explained that it was something that had been specially made for him. When the gas was launched into the room, the chairman was not feeling his best. The doctor realized it had to be. When he was rebuked for something, a policeman was dying. He'd noticed that even experienced divers above level 9 couldn't cope, and the cop is now at level 12. Unbearable pressures are now rolling down on the guy's body, as if he's several kilometers deep without any equipment. The doctor was grabbed by a white demon and ordered him to stop. The doctor explained that it takes a long time to get to the guys. They've never questioned why every time a cop dies, they get stronger. Throughout his entire existence, it's to fulfill his full potential. And they have to put his body under maximum pressure. The policeman had a green aura, and the guys were puzzled because he could barely control his ability. The police officer had a green aura, and the guys were puzzled because he could barely control his ability. The doctor explained that when his life began to be in real danger, his ability finally deigned to kick in. The boys have decided to let the policeman out. He could die at this rate. But the doctor pointed out that it's a very rare occurrence, and that's why it's better to find out his limit. The doctor told the boys to pay attention to him. Then the policeman's aura turned blue. The doctor reminded the boys that glitch users can express different aura colors depending on their level. In the most glorious level, aka Alpha, is green then, in this level, aka blue. Next is the Gamma level, aka purple, and last comes the cheat level of red. That closes this circle is the Delta level, aka white. The only holder of this level is the president of the Boro Moon. Now the doctor couldn't wait to see what level the doctor would reach. The guys around them realized that if he did happen to be president, they would have no choice but to follow him. That's when the guy came out with the purple color. The doctor admired the cop's strength, so he decided to add more pressure, from which the rural colored red. The poisonous hunk noticed that the guy had reached the Mago level in a counted second. And it was only the poisonous Han who noticed that the guy had turned white, after which the glass shattered. All of this caused the policeman to pass out. Poison Hong was well aware that even though his ability had manifested, he himself had not actually changed, except for changes in strength and other factors. But if they could teach him. The doctor has ordered the boys to concentrate all their energies on steam from now on. They're 4 psychos who once dominated the entire country. They were to create a training method for him so that he could properly control his ability. The Poison Han was well aware that one training session wouldn't be enough, but they didn't have much choice. The director of District X came to see the president, who cut down a branch. The president asked the director what he thought he should do damaged tree. The director replied that he didn't know what was worth doing, but he's got his eye on it. It's just a branch, and it's nothing serious. Then the president said that no matter how big a tree is, even it can fall from the slightest wound. In the president's opinion, it's better to cut it down before it starts to rot. The director immediately took the hint, and so he fell on his knees and started apologizing. Then the president asked him why he did it. The director began to explain that a few days ago one of the districts was damaged and destroyed by a monster attack. Then the president asked why no one had informed him about it. The director was replaced. Then the president told him not to even try to hide something from him, and if he deceived him, let him consider that he was living his last day. The director explained that he must have reported this information to the president and was worried that he would not be promoted because of it. Later, I found out that one of the rubbish men who attacked the neighborhood was a police officer. Besides him, the members of the 4 loonies were also there. The president went round to the principal and said he'd decided the principal was a rotten branch, that he should get rid of before it destroys the whole tree. After all, if the purple moon gets rid of it, it can take root and start taking forever. The director again began to apologize, which even hit his head, and the floor with longing he asked for forgiveness. After all, he had dedicated his whole life to the purple moon. The president has agreed to kill him personally, but if the director thinks he is worthy to stay, he must prove it indeed. When the manager appeared on the scene, the president replied that once the director had dealt with the manager, he would forgive him for all his faults. The guys started fighting. The director began to dominate the attack. According to him, whoever dared to touch his life did not live to see tomorrow. The president was disappointed. He'd never beaten an alpha before, and so he hoped that something would change. White Snake swept that puck who was in the island was a novice amateur, but on the other hand, the director is a head taller and on his own strength. Then the director asked the president if he needed to finish off the manager, and he too brought a lot of lunch to their organization. The president gave the go-ahead on this one. The director only wanted to hit the guy he was able to block his punch. The director didn't understand how this was possible. That's when the manager punched him in the neck. The director cracked an aura. He said there's nothing stopping him from killing the guy right now. He shouldn't think he had a chance just because he came back to life. The principal started beating the guy up. Then the president asked his aide what he thought about the situation. The White Snake began to think about the situation. Although the manager can come back to life again and again, he thinks that the director is still superior to him in both strength and ability. When the president said to bring his gaze back to the director, his aura went from blue to green. The director was perplexed. He was superior to the guy in every aspect, but for some reason it felt like he was outclassing him. The president said that a policeman's strength lies in his continuous ejection of force, which can't be said for a manager. His vitality is directly related to his glitch. In which case, it's obvious he's absorbing it from his opponent. The guys started fighting again, but the principal lost. The president began to clap. A lot of time had passed since a new member had entered the Purple Moon, and now of today, the boys would be in the position of his secretary. Whitesnake didn't understand why a manager would be promoted to secretary. It seemed to the president of Hog Moon that the president of the country had changed his mind, because someone was behind the 4 lunatics starting to act out. Then White Snake said that if the president wanted, he could create better users and kill the president. President Bagrov didn't want to do this, at least not right now. They don't know for sure yet whether the government is finished in this. Better to concentrate on their forces and catching the cop and the 4 psychos. If they find out the president was in any way involved in their activities, then he pays for it. The policeman himself sat himself a room. He remembered all the moments that were president of Bogrova Moon. They did not raise his body as if he was frozen, and also his power. He couldn't even imagine that such a monster could exist in the world. That's when 2 blokes came up behind the policeman. Not to be out of his mind, probably scouring every crevice for him right now. The manager's with them, alive and well. The Russian asked where he was now. He was then told that it was obvious that he had been brought here every time he was beaten half to death. The guy finally remembered. He remembered getting a heart massage, and then he died. Poison Han explained that he'd been transferred to a regular hospital when they pulled him out of the dead world, and that's not the kind of thing a crazy doc is capable of. The policeman then asked what experiments the doctor had performed on him. The man himself came into the room and decided to explain to him. The policeman judged the doctor then and began to question what he was doing to him. The doctor explained that now that certain memories had come back to him, he would finally be able to explain it to him. He had first been here when the rumors of the unkillable policeman had reached him. The policeman didn't seem to have contacted her with that man. And according to the doctor, he has the potential to bring the president's abilities to the purple moon. He was looking through a microscope, studying the blood, then who is able to happen the president of the purple moon. And the truth exists. After that, he created a new user based on his blood. With that collected sample, he was able to restore youth to the poisonous Han and White Demon. In fact, they are well into their 50s. The doctor said they didn't take his blood for nothing, and these 2 will train him so that he can fulfill his potential and defeat the president. The policeman didn't realize he thought it was unrealistic. There's no way he could defeat a monster like the president, the guy thought. The repair doctor filled in that the policeman was even able to wound him, and surmised that there is no man in this world who can strike him with pure luck. It just proves that he can fight him, and that's the reason they rely on him. The policeman didn't understand what the doctor was saying. He didn't understand what the doctor could be sure of if he sat in his laboratory every day and played with mutation. Poison Han explained that the doctor's wife and daughter were killed by the president. He buried them alive in cement. Poison Han explained that the policeman should, and so understands that you seem to have already had a life, and his colleagues, he more than anyone else should know that it is best not to criticize a person without knowing his past. Also, the White Demon couldn't believe they'd have to work with someone like a cop. The guys came to start and didn't come to the secret training center in the lab. Like the policeman already said, he doesn't have the strength or the will to fight the president. Then the White Demon lighted the lad to rule still respect for the elders. Well, it was hard for the policeman, because although they were older, they didn't look his age. The Poison Han began to explain that he had taken the works with him from the island. He may have already appreciated his ability to object, and was now preparing to make him a key member of the organization. Besides, he subscribes to the concept of enemy of my enemy and friend, and the guy's more than confident he'll crush him before he gets to the manager. So the guy has no choice but to fight the co-president. Poison Han was the first to drop the guy, and something even flew off. That's how the guys were going to train him. Poison Han explained that you have to watch your opponent's first attack. First, you have to estimate what he's capable of. Then you find a gap and hit it. And then you activate the glitch. It won't concentrate in his fist, and then you direct it into one of the opponent's vital organs. That way, the guy can guarantee that his opponent will recover to it. Poison Han gave the guy credit, that not everyone could take a punch from him. Even if he was exhausted, anyone else in his month would have dropped dead. Guys train a guy to use his glia properly. The policeman finally saw glia for the first time in his life. Poison Han noticed that the policeman had a goofy expression on his face, then a good sign that the guy could see his aura. It meant that his body was starting to use glia. Then the White Demon grabbed the policeman and decided to throw him against the ground. The White Demon explained that his ability gives him immense strength, but the ability and Poison Han ability gives him sharp fists as if they were swords. The guy started explaining that a policeman has to block a punch by anticipating the opponent's movement, so he has to watch his eyes. He must use his opponent's strength against himself. The policeman was already covered in blood. He thought he was just being bullied because he would sooner die than learn something. The White Demon started attacking again. The policeman realized he should be allowed to grab himself. The guys decided to attack in pairs. After all, they have to increase the intensity. And so, before a policeman gets used to fighting one opponent, in order to maximize results, he needs to strengthen himself at least 3 times to fight both of them. They started beating up a policeman, and the policeman said that they should team up. It's ridiculous. The white demon noticed that the guy's aura in the cell was white. Now it only had a purple aura. Poison Han thought that at that moment the fear of death made him reach the white aura. His power level seemed to depend on the severity of the threat. He needs to learn to keep his composure using his power to the best of his ability. It's the only way to kill the president. When they were young, they rushed for the best and brightest. That's when the president showed up. He was more powerful than any of them. They couldn't fight him one-on-one. It would have gone nowhere. But when the four of them united, the president was on the verge of life to death. After all, they didn't ask the policeman to fight alongside them, because he had become little stronger than he was before. It's pointless to try to act as a team when they can't stand each other. Once they push him over the edge, he will come in and deliver the decisive blow using his power. A crushing blow to make their plan work. He must learn to control his power. The white demon surmised that it wouldn't work if the guy acted like a beast. Crimson Moon had already started looking for him, so he didn't have much time. A while later, the policeman was lying on the floor. He didn't understand what the guys wanted from him, but they told him we'd been reduced to the basics for months. There was a regular mechanic working there for a while, and at one point he was kicked in the head by a white snake. The man's first reaction was, of course, surprise, but he immediately recognized the president's secretary. The secretary got angry because the guy has no right to call the president by name, so he jammed his hand in his leg. But other people around me were watching. They were shocked by things, thinking that some kind of battle had started and the police should be called. But they were approached by a Taken who told them not to do it. He told them to get out of here if they didn't want to be in this guy's shoes. Even if they called the cops or the army, he wouldn't care. Then the white snake came closer to the man and asked her only one question: whether his former colleagues had contacted him. The man was surprised they were alive. To the man, these were dead, they had betrayed him. And now he's in this position because of them. That's why he didn't contact them. Then the secretary, or rather White Snake, introduced the new guy. He explained that this guy had just been hired, and he's pretty good at his job, in other words, better not him. Tay approached the guy since he was a fan and wanted to live my hand, which the guys grabbed hold of. The manager broke it to the guy. He immediately said why he was being dramatic, because he still had one arm left. White Snake later confirmed that it didn't look like the guys were messing with this guy. The manager also confirmed this. He said it was most likely not the case, but it is still unknown when they will do it. But surely the guy will let them know, because he's scared, to disobey them. That's why he broke his arms. He's a scared, docile sheep. It was already evening, and the three guys were sitting in the car. The white demon realized that it was quite dangerous, given that the moon was after them. But Poison Han realized that they had no choice but to team up if they wanted to defeat the president. They would have to fight together so that the policeman could finish him off. And I showed the guys everything. That's why they need to pick up the Shinto right now. The policeman approached the guy and told him that he wanted to buy medicines, and the old man immediately chased him away because he had nothing left and asked him to leave him alone. Then in a quiet voice, the policeman said that both of his close acquaintances were sitting in cars. He heard this and immediately pressed the button. White drove up at once in his car and told the policeman to get the lad a car, for he would have just reported to the Purple Moon that they were here. The old man asked me to let him go. After all, he didn't want to mess with them at 5. But Poison Hong explained that he was doing his best. He hasn't driven a car for a long time. At one point, another car crashed into the boys, which caused them to flip over. It was White Snake and the manager. The manager couldn't believe he was meeting a policeman again. Only the white demon said that the two guys you're not in favor of aren't enough to defeat them. White Snake called the rest of the guys off the machine. After all, he wanted to give them members of the legal team from their new business strategy department. The white demon didn't understand the legal system, because they don't care about the law. The Poison Han realized exactly what it was not to linger here, and they must deal with them quickly to avoid them. Poison Hong told the cop to take the boys and get out of here before this whole thing gets sorted out, because those low-life Sonys can kill them. The guys started battles and threw the guys apart. Both realize they're just cannon fodder, but they're not getting any smaller. It's like they're herding hungry dogs. However, Poison Han realized that even all together about her and the two reach the purple level, but constantly rise up and continue to fight. However, the guy and the white demon will not lose. But maybe he realized they were being distracted to get to the policeman. The cop was watching all this. He realized that these guys didn't look like wimps. Then he heard a voice from the car telling him to get him out of there. A policeman was approached by Tay, who said he wouldn't let him get away, and also offered to sort this place out once and for all. He was sick of seeing his face over and over again. But he was interrupted by the serpent bike and said he'd deal with him himself, and the guy's got to hang out with two guys. The White Snake noticed that the guy loses control every time he fights a cop. White Snake noticed that he and the policeman often bumped into each other. and suggested we get to know each other better. His favorite hobby is dissecting people with his bare hands. The White Snake realized that he wanted to beat up the policeman, and the policeman himself realized that he had to deal with the forces. There was no way he could alienate the president if they couldn't even deal with this jerk. So the policeman went on the attack. The snakes returned the policeman's attack. He was of course surprised to think that a policeman can only swing his fists mindlessly. But the guy's calculating, and here's a move like this. The guy's brutal training has taken its toll. White Snake had noticed that it was interesting. Nevertheless, he was starting to get bored with it before he got completely bored. He should end it. Then on the transfer of the two guys, a White Demon manager came up to the White Demon and wanted to fight him. The White Demon suggested that we respect our elders, and grabbed the guy by the throat and gave him a crushing blow. After that, the manager's eyes started to swim. He realized the guy was worth being afraid of. But he wondered what would happen when he fed all his power. The White Snake touched the policeman. From what was very surprised here did not realize what kind of technique the White Snake was using. He can't dodge his blows. The White Snake noticed that the guy's regeneration was impressive. He wondered what would happen if his limbs were torn off. Poison Han and the White Demon that the policeman was fighting, and they didn't understand why he hadn't run away yet, but they needed to deal with the guy soon and help him. During the battle between the manager and the White Demon, he noticed that I don't know why, but he's getting weaker and weaker. At one point, the manager decided to carry his own punch. The managers made a point of telling the guy if you're messing with him, because it's disappointing. He was hoping he'd be stronger. The guy had a red aura. He had absorbed enough power. And the white man didn't realize that the manager should have the same strength as a policeman. But for some reason his aura is red. But he realized why he would stop weaker. Then the manager grabbed the guy by the neck and started in the shower, on the island. They did the same thing to him. The most venomous Han ordered the White Demon himself to get up and not to relax. After all, they can ask, and the policeman then he realized that they had no time, and apparently he had already saved him himself. The poisonous Han started taking out all the people. The policeman almost fainted, but without the serpent saying it does not do, for the latter is ready to reward him with the most horrible death for disrespecting the president. With one movement of his hand, he pierced him with 2 fingers. Because of this, the policeman had a red aura. Only the White Snake wanted to leave at once, because he realized that it was all bad and he had to leave as soon as possible. He realized his fingers were caught, and he couldn't move after he got hit in the face. Tay was surprised that the guy could overpower the secretary with 1 punch. The guy realized that I'm here can break an old man's neck then and feed his strength, then he's stronger than a policeman. Well, somehow his plan worked and the power went back to the White Demon. The White Demon explained that the guy had limits to how much power he could absorb, and called him a stupid man. His body can't handle all his power, and he can't mash the whole sea into 1 cup. White Snake realized he hadn't underestimated the boys. His team had lost. That strength wasn't enough, but he also wondered why reinforcements hadn't come. Poison Han explained to the secretary to leave. After all, their mission was forbidden with a friend and suggested him to leave quickly. The White Demon didn't understand what the point of it all was. To let him go. After all, they should finish him off right now. He doesn't like this man still on the island. Poison Han explained that they had expended a lot of energy. The effects of the pill will wear off soon. Besides, the policemen are at their limit. It would be wiser for them to leave now before they learnt of their weakness. Poison Han praised the policeman. He was returning to his normal state, and he's good, so he suggested him to go back. But the policeman didn't know what to do. He wanted to kill Tay, but his partner said the cop wasn't strong enough, and to get back at him. The guy also explained to the cop that at any second they could make up. These pills don't last forever, and it would be very bad if reinforcements arrived. It's too dangerous to stay, and the cop will still have time to kill his enemy. But if he's not going to leave, the guy's willing to leave him here. The choice is still his. The White Snakes didn't know what to say to their president. That's when the reinforcements arrived. But he immediately shouted at them because they were not late and asked them to explain themselves. Then another person appeared who said that the white of meat was to blame and he himself had ordered personally not to interfere. It was Kang. The boys were already able to arrive at the lab. Of course they weren't allowed in again, but after they showed their faces, they were allowed in. Kang explained. They don't have to take heavy casualties, leaving the psychopaths to the White Snake. He realized that the president wouldn't like that. He grabbed the guy's head and said the guy must be wondering why he's here. He's taken an interest in the psychopaths. He's assigned a surveillance team to them, so the guys should be ready to move in as soon as they discover their hideout. Sometime later, Tay and White Snake came to the president. The White Snake explained that the 2 guys and the policeman had turned out to be stronger than they had thought, and also especially the policeman had conducted himself. He had become much stronger than he was before. The president explained that he liked his secretary's reaction very much. He makes excuses for himself instead of looking at things soberly. Then the secretary fell on his knees and began to apologize. He said it was all there for his weakness and carelessness. The president thinks this is his limit and he can handle it. And by the way, the president turned his attention to Tae, who had also lost. He explained that he thought he could take away the white demon's power, just like he had taken it from his principal. But the president assumes that the more power he can take away, the less time he can also retain. And detrimentally, that's why he lost. And after all, a bowl can't hold a bucket of water. That made sense. The guy remembered the policeman who was able to pull the red level by himself with ease to remove the white snake. The guy realized that he could only deal with the policeman with the white demon's power, but he couldn't use it for long. A guy asked the president if he could get stronger. He explained that, unlike the white snake, he could bet stronger. His power usually flows through his veins. That's why they need to be strengthened to increase the flow of energy. He must open up all the blocked veins distributed throughout his body, so that he can match the more powerful flow of glia. The president's fly opening in the stream was a bit of a problem. His veins could burst if he couldn't handle the president's power, resulting in entrusted death. The guy asked the president if he had done this before for other people. The president explained that he had done it 3 or 4 times, but no one had survived. It's up to the guy. Whether he can survive it, he has to risk his life for the greater good, or live a long but fragile life. The president started the procedure. He said the pain would be unbearable. He must fight it. If he doesn't fight it, he'll be an empty shell. Later, the president and his secretary came to the president's office. The first to speak was the president, who said he was happy to meet the president of the country. The country's presidential aide couldn't understand how the chairman of the Crimson Moon could just show up out of nowhere like that without warning. It is not acceptable, even if he is the chairman of the Crimson Moon. The Crimson Moon chairman thanked the president for taking the time to talk to him, and the president replied that it was the least he could do for him. The chairman believed that when one had to leave in a bid, he was of course genuinely pleased when the latter proposed the premiership. He believed that the Crimson Moon and the government could prosper together hand in hand. And yet, for some reason, the president created a secret task force to hunt for the Purple Moon. He recruited 2 guys. The president tried to make excuses, but the chairman said he's not here to hear excuses. He's here to warn the president. They're not moving their core business to another bank. It's time for the Purple Moon to expand. They plan to influence all of Korea's financial sectors through mergers and acquisitions and start making global investments. The president realized that this means the chairman wants to take the entire economy in the country. The presidential aide sent his gun at the chairman. He did not understand how the chairman could afford to threaten the head of state. The chairman said that the guy has to realize who the gun is pointed at. Otherwise, he would endanger himself and also endanger innocent people. That's when the white snake spoke and ordered the guy to put the gun away. After all, that's no respect for the chairman. The president said he would lift all restrictions that prevent the transfer of the Scarlet Moon. Also, before the chairman left, he noticed that the boys had started a fire on the mountain. That was the lab. Already in the car, the chairman asked his assistant who was on the mountain. He explained that both Inspector Naya's team and Vice President Kang were there. He is probably controlling the situation. Whitesnake asked the president why he sent Chief Kim there. He has a red level, but it seems like a waste of resource, even if they are dealing with 4 psychopaths. But determined he's not a psychopathic killer. He wants to get rid of the idea of rebelling against the Scarlet Moon, so that no one else will dare rise up against them. The president decided at one point to visit the mountain himself. Already in the lab itself, and the doctor was taking Seisuke's blood. Because the boys had run out of pills. They need more pills. The guys took the rest of them. They had almost nothing left. The doctor realized the Crimson Moon was coming to them. It's a matter of time, so they need to make more pills, and the police officers are their last hope in many ways. Poison Han asked if they shouldn't leave before the Crimson Moon found out about this place. They wouldn't be able to cope if Crimson Moon attacked them here, but he didn't know where they could go. After all, it would take at least a year to build another lab where they could make pills. Besides, that's not the only problem. They have nowhere to go. There isn't a corner of this country that Crimson Moon didn't know about, which is why they set up the lab here. So they should see what happens when they heal a cop. Shinto asked to have his chains removed. The white demon explained that the guys were trying to heal him, but he filled as soon as he broke his leg. He's an invalid. His leg can't be healed. He wouldn't be in this position if the guys hadn't argued back then. He was asked to close his mouth and just take the pill. It was explained to him that it was a pill that would cure him. But he didn't believe it. The bones in his legs were now more than splinters and dust. He didn't understand how it could heal itself. Then they wanted to put a pill in the force. When he zeroed in on her, he slept through the red aura. The white demon had a hard time looking at the guy. He immediately remembered the first time he took the pill himself. It felt like his whole body was being torn apart. The lads congratulated me on my return. The white demon explained that there was a reason they brought him here, and they gave him a pill. Shinto healed his legs, which he was very happy about. He's fighting again. Already the bandits had gathered around the lab, who were ready to storm the labs. Then as the team dealt with the guards, the vice president watched. That is, he remarked that the guys did pretty well in principle. The guy also said he'd take over the rest of the guys. And you can't interfere and you can't let anyone get close, not even a mouse. When the guy opened the doors, he was met by 2 men with guns. But when they fired, the bullets didn't take him. The guys ran out into the corridor and saw a lot of dead bodies of guards. They were at a loss as to what had happened here and who had done it. But at one point the vice president appeared in front of him, who was laughing loudly. He was asked at once whether this creature could be called a human being. It looked more like an image than a human being. The vice president himself was delighted to see them. He was looking forward to it. He assumed the guy on the right was a white demon, and the one on the left is a poisonous Hun. The bloke was asked who he was, of course, because he'd managed to kill all the guards. He introduced himself. He always wanted to meet the 4 psychopaths. He heard that Poison Han was the most intelligent of the 4. Poison Han suggested killing the pig before the others got there. The white demon launched the first attack. He realized at once that the vice president was strong and even stronger than he felt, and the president himself had to give credit that the white demon was strong, but still he was stronger. He planted his hands, which made the white demon fall over. The president explained that he had traveled a long way to meet him, but he did not true his expectations. It disappointed him. The white demon realized that not only was he left himself than before, but the effects of his pills were running out too quickly. The vice president was approached from behind by a venomous Ana, who threw a few punches at the guy. The poison Hun immediately recognized that something was wrong, because his fat is like armor. It can't damage his organs. The resident explained that his fat is as solid as possible because he is surrounded by his power. Now it was the president's turn. Because the poison Han's arm was stuck in the grease, he couldn't move from the attack. Then came a white demon who wanted to hit the president's species, but again he failed. He couldn't do any damage. That means they'll probably lose. The president put his arm around the guy and asked him if he still didn't realize that he couldn't make peace with him by force. I mean, they're on completely different levels. The white demon was thrown on a deflection, after which he became. The vice president remarked that he always wanted to fight the white demon, because he almost killed the president even though it was a long time ago. But in the end, they disappoint him a lot. It's starting to get angry. If they don't want to die as pitiful dogs, they should show them all they can do. Poison Han realized that the Crimson Moon people were definitely stronger than they were before. Besides, the guys had become much weaker. The president was called away by a policeman. The policeman himself didn't know him, and the vice president didn't know him either. But the policeman was ready to beat the guy to a pulp. Poison Han stood there in not understanding and didn't realize what the policeman was doing here. And how he's standing on his feet, he's lost too much blood. That's why they told him to get out of here, because the vice president is not someone he can handle. The guys noticed something different about the cop than usual. Then the vice president suggested the guy closer to him, which means he's not in the best mood right now. The guys he's been wanting to fight for a long time turned out to be mediocre. But the vice president policeman would not listen and struck the first blow. The blow the vice president felt well, he realized he had a red aura. The only thing the cop said was that he wanted to come to the case. The guys who were watching this were surprised because the policeman was able to reach the red aura without increasing in volume. The vice president himself realized that this policeman was much stronger than the 2 guys he fought. Sanli's feelings are like the power of an inner drop. The policeman calmly read the vice president's movement. He could feel his energy building up inside his enemy. The vice president was perplexed. He couldn't dispatch after the blows. He was utterly bewildered. No one of red level or lower could penetrate his defense. That meant a higher level policeman. Samsa president interrupts every time his ability fails, but the policeman now feels like he's not losing to anyone. His companions Sandrelli over this fight. They realized that the policeman was now even stronger than both of them put together. But still, he should have gone to level red. Chinya's little fighting skills when it comes to his strength. All that matters is who has more strength. The difference in the amount of force creates a gap that can't be bridged. A few more blows and the vice president was lying on the ground. The cop was able to handle it. He using such a large amount of energy, not increasing his size, let alone getting blood out of him in a swing. He was able to beat the vapor. and even study the white aura for a while, albeit briefly. Then Han remarks that the guy hasn't increased in size because he can't do it now because every time he needs time to recover after he's increased in size. That means that every time he changes, he uses up a significant amount of strength. The policeman was asked how he feels right now. He said he feels completely in control of his powers, but he seems to feel a tremendous amount of power flowing inside of him. He has no idea how he got to the white level. But Poison Han realized that it still wasn't his full strength. The policeman felt it seemed there was always an unintentional level of strength in him, so powerful that he couldn't even feel it, let alone deal with it. And it seems that his strength was greatly reduced when he had a large amount of blood in the hall, causing him to be able to control it and reach the white level. His potential is probably much greater than what he can achieve now, but if a guy learns to control all his inner strength in himself, then he can experience even more power and more level. Maybe then he can defeat the president, but he shouldn't forget about the feeling he just experienced. It would be best if he could use all his strength without building up mass. But they praised the guy anyway because it wasn't easy for them to deal with the president, even though the guy had an aura like them. But they had the difference between the vice president. They have to admit they're not as strong as they used to be. The policeman didn't see the point of it. He couldn't spill his blood every time. But he was advised to remember the feeling he'd just had. This storm is more important than he realizes. He can't learn to control his power in a few days. It takes time. And he shouldn't rush into it. The boys should have walked away from that point, with the doctor and Shinto before it was too late. When the boys returned, they saw that their old acquaintance had disappeared. Of course they didn't understand how he dared. Because of his whimsy, they were outside, and now he's just run away. The guys have to find a doctor. When they got to the doctor's office, he said they were almost done. They told him, of course, that they had to leave now. The doctor pointed to the place where the last of the pills were left because they have to take theirs and leave nothing behind. You guys have to kill the president before they run out. If the guys screw up, it's all for nothing. The policeman asked the doctor if he was going to leave them. He didn't see the point of it because he wasn't a mutant like the guys. He'd just get caught if he tried to escape. Besides, he was sick of it. You could say they were doing them a favor. A cop has to survive, and only he can kill the president. If he survives, he's already killed him. The boys went outside, but there were a lot of guards outside, but that was the only way they could escape. Well, the guys should have been foxes. Not both were left with weak points after the fight, and the cop himself has unstable strength right now. If he gets better, we have to remember that a ton of blood was taken from him a couple of hours ago. Nor do they have the slightest idea how strong the guards are. So the guys decided to ditch the car and go the other way. The boys decided to go through the forest. Last time it was the sea and now it was a mountain, but the white demon was told to shut up and do as the poisonous Han says. The white demon surmised that this was a path no ordinary person could have traveled through. And it's a miracle they got out of there alive. The Crimson Moon people would have stayed until they arrived, but the guys were running out of time and had to leave. The white demon remarked that this place where they were now was very marital. The policeman remarked that it probably looked like an abandoned film set. Poison Han asked the policeman to go look for something to drink while he talked and surveyed the area with the white demon. While the boys were arguing over who would go looking for water, a girl from the building was watching them, and she moved closer. The girl immediately introduced herself as the CEO of Crimson Moon, and of course would underestimate the skills of how a girl can work for the Scarlet Moon since she's still a child. Poison Han realized something was wrong, and he had to be more careful. He sprinkled it on his friend because he had a bad feeling. If she's their CEO, he bets she's stronger than the vice president. Momentarily, the eye girl admixture caressed the white demon and struck him. Poison Han started to react and wanted to strike, for otherwise they would lose. Just when he wanted to hit, the girl immediately disappeared from sight. I got behind her and stabbed him in the head. The guy thought they were going to die here. I mean, she's very strong. Then a policeman appeared and asked the girl who she was. Already the doctor was sitting outside his lab. He realized it was a pity he wouldn't have had time to bother with the pills. The guys had come much earlier than he had expected. The president himself showed up at the doctor's office. The doctor will think it's very kind of him to join him in his final hours. He appreciates taking the time. The doctor would be upset if only his subordinate joined him. The president asked the doctor if he planned the whole thing. After all, he was able to convince the president to set up this lab, then freed the poisonous Han, and also brought the white demon out of his coma, and also made them young, and was even able to locate the police son of his potential. And it was all for me. He wanted revenge for his wife and daughter. That's when the doctor got angry and pointed his gun at the president. Well, as expected, the president froze the doctor's hand. The doctor asked the president how strong he was and how he does it. The president explained that glia is an amazing power. It creates a huge gap between people without and with it. There's more to it than that. The power works differently for everyone. Even if the aura color is the same, depending on a person's strength, a skill that seems invincible to a weaker power may be useless against someone with stronger glia. That's why some battles end unimaginably quickly. But they're the ones who treat ordinary people like a doctor. Then the doctor put his other hand on the gun and put it directly on his head, and said that even if he couldn't kill the president, he would die by his own hand. The president has frozen the doctor out completely. After all, he's not finished yet. The doctor won't die until he lets him, for he still has questions to ask. Then you'll wear a policeman and a girl. The girl herself threw a few punches at the guy's face, and he didn't know what was wrong with her. She's unimaginably fast. It's like she's teleporting from place to place. Poison Han was connecting to Turquoise. He realized he only needed to hit her. The girl noticed that she was starting to get tired of it because the guy was always falling from behind. But she wanted to grab the policeman. He realized that he would be too small to take the blow, but they only needed one punch. Developed. When the girl wanted to hit the policeman, he was able to grab her arm. But only the policeman wanted to hit her. She was able to dodge even in that position. She would be able to cover her body with a white aura. She herself didn't think that Blizzo would be able to read her movement. She thought it was time for her to start acting more serious. Poison Han had no idea that someone with a white aura existed other than the president. But still, the president must be stronger than this child. Behind these girls came a white demon who was able to grab her neck. He realized they couldn't die. The white demon decided to sacrifice himself when he grabbed the baby. He asked his friends to just run away because if they stayed, they would die. The policeman didn't really want the case, but the poisonous one pointed out that they had no other choice if they stayed, they were finished. After a while, the white demon, he was already lying down, but he still didn't want to let go of the girl, grabbed her leg. Of course she wanted to give him a painless death, and yet he decided to make her even angrier. She would make sure that his friends would soon meet him in hell. Then Shinto came to him. He said goodbye to his acquaintance, closing his eyes. We're brought back to the lab where the doctor was frozen by the president. The president was interested in how the lunatics were able to regain their youth. After all, old people should be left to live out their days in peace. The power that flows in their blood manifests itself in the form of various unimaginable forces. And that's why the president is not calling, has learnt that you blood of some person contains the power to be able and to cast others. And so he assumes, this man's ability to be so powerful and healing, that his power can reverse the process of cellular vision. This and other things are becoming quite possible. As I expected the president to do, he won't be able to get the doctor to give an honest answer, the most effective way to get someone to talk. Then the doctor will experience pain he's never experienced before. Or this new experience could be a gift for a scientist like him. The president poked the doctor's head in. The doctor couldn't think straight. People lose the ability to lie if you stimulate a certain part of the brain. What's about to happen will make him very confused. So the president asked again, did he produce the pills here that made the boys younger? The doctor answered in the affirmative. Then the president asked to look for they were made of blood. To which the doctor did not give a full answer. The doctor wouldn't let his mind give up. Well, one moment the doctor just bit his tongue. The president didn't want to leave the doctor with that choice. He would feel worse about his family leaving this world early. What they'll see is how long he can hold out. Already in his mind, the doctor saw his family. The doctor died with a smile on his face. Death was the only way he could find peace. He was a worthy adversary, I must say. The president has ordered the soldiers. From now on, everyone must drop what they're doing and do their best to catch the policeman. They must bring him to the president. The president also ordered the White Snake to make sure that everything possible is done to catch them. They might try to flee the country. So the guy should control all airports, seaports, and related organizations. White Snake was surprised that his president had thrown all his energies into finding this guy. The president also looked at Tae, who didn't look so good. The president went over and touched the guy using his power. He was able to wake him up. And then he got stronger. The only way to find out if the guy got stronger was for him to fight someone stronger than him. Then the White Snake offered his candidacy. But the president said no because he wasn't strong enough. So the president offered the guy to swallow his strength. The president has ordered the guy to do everything we can, or he dies. The president thought it was boring, so he said the guy was getting bored. He had a red aura. Zero in an instant, the guy's aura completely disappeared, and he started laughing. He appeared to have a white aura. His words were that he would now rule the Purple Moon. Police poisoned Han and barely managed to escape. I think he told the guys before morning that if the lab was destroyed, he'd give the guy the coordinates of a flat to hide in. That's exactly where the guys were going. The policeman's regeneration decreased as if he was fighting the president. Probably also level once decreases when he fights against a delta level. That's when the girl appeared. She was surprised to be noticed. She was asked what happened to the white bottom and said that he had died. That girl believed that each of their members were psychopaths, no hate each other. She didn't expect a violent reaction from a poisonous Hunnit. Only Steam didn't want to attack her. The girl was able to counterattack him and break his shin. The girl certainly would have liked to let the guy hit her, but he was too slow. It was unbearable for her. Then a Shinto appeared behind her. She immediately recognized the guy's speed, and she recognized him straight away. The rumors were true. He was very fast, but it still wasn't enough for her. But the guy wasn't going to catch her. She was able to get caught by a police officer and hit the police. Shinto noticed that the girl could turn her head at the last moment, so the blow was not critical, and she could recover soon. And they'll make her pay. And Shinto also reported that the doctor was killed by the president, and he's on his way here. The process was already able to put his feet up, so he switched off. He was able to reach the white aura in complete control of himself. It was the white demon that believed in his potential, enough to give his life. Carries over to the president. Only Bello Ismay wanted to intervene. The president rejected his decision. It was the president who found this moment quite amusing. Tay said he knows the president has no strength left in him, so he should stop treating him so arrogantly. He's draining every last drop out of him. Well, the guy didn't realize he was taking away a lot of power, but he was getting heavier by the second. One moment he realized that the president was like an infinite amount of energy. And he's not like the others at all. The guy immediately got down on his knees and started apologizing. He was deluded that he could beat the president. But the president didn't punish him because they need kids like him in their organization. The president has been heard. That the guy was the cop's biggest enemy. Then ordered him to wear a white snake mustache and look for him. And make sure they bring him back alive. The president realized that one has a huge generation in the other's ability to lie in others' power. This battle would be legendary. The president told the secretary himself that they should call the rector on strategic matters. That means he can become immortal. As long as he has it, the moon will take over the country, but also over the whole world. Already in the flat, the poisonous Han realized that he had to take the pills, but he couldn't bear his old body. But they had no other choice. A policeman woke up and went into the room when they were arguing about the pills, and the first thing the policeman did, and asked where they were now. He was told that it was a house that the doctor had made in advance in case there was ever a laboratory to discover. The white demon and the doctor had terrible manners, but they were good people. Shinto stole the poison Han pills and drank one. Then the guy said they had to get out of here, the cop with the scope at his place. He said the white demon asked him to make sure the guy took care of the cop, so the president doesn't kill him. They should prepare properly. The guys went outside. Shinto swept the police officer into the street. The policeman asked how the white demon died. From which Shinto was even surprised that the guy mourned the death of an ally. He was surprised that the guy was still human like that. The police teacher that the white demon wanted the cop to live. The president crushed his skull like he was a small cockroach. It was a very violent death, so the cop should kill the president for his ally. It's the best way they can do it for the memory of the man. Then the princess immediately appeared white aura. Of course the guy was surprised because he thought he should first take it out, and he brought out the white aura right away. But it was everything he'd been waiting for. Since he learnt from the Poison Han and White Demon how to punch with his fists, he himself will teach Sucker punching with his feet. Shinto pointed to the tree and asked if the policeman could jump into it, but he was surprised because the tree was several times taller than the man himself. Shinto used his red aura and was able to jump above the tree. The policeman was very surprised how this was possible. Shinto pointed out that the use of the legs is a very important aspect of combat. They're also the best tool in defense, and his ability to jump can save a life at a critical moment. It's very simple. He needs to store all the power in his legs, just as he stores it in his fists when he strikes. The policeman realized that the tree was 10 meters high. Shinto wondered if a police officer could do it on the first try. Well, to his disappointment, it wasn't. The policeman was taking a hit from a branch. Then the guy advised that not only should the energy be channeled into his legs, but it should also be distributed evenly. He has to use his head if he wants to defeat the president. Shinto told the guy not to come back until he could jump the tree. Of course, the policeman asked for more advice, but he was told that he had to figure it out for himself, and that was the only way. A while later, A girl showed up at the top of the building and said she'd killed a white demon. She was asked if she had seen a policeman, to which she responded in the affirmative. And she also told the president that he had a white aura. He was of course very surprised and asked how he was compared to the president himself, but the girl didn't know what to say to that, so she said she was just unsure. Shinto also asked the Poison Han why he was watching the policeman. He was told that a man who cannot control his power cannot be a Prevo. Shinto asked to give the guy some time, saw he was sure to pull it off. Poison Han asked me to cook him some noodles, but Shinto didn't want to do it, so he asked the guy to make it himself. Then he rebuked him that Poison Han was 2 years older than him. Shinto that his age is his complex. After all these years, he hasn't changed a bit. Also, Poison Han believes that the guys recognize the policeman as a disciple. It was already evening, and the poisonous Han noted that the noodles that cooked the other one had a leg up on her. The guys had already gone outside to go to the policeman. They saw how tired the guy was already. Poison Han again pointed out that as he himself had said, the policeman would get nowhere. But he was stopped by Shinto and told to just watch. The policeman tensed his legs again and managed to fly higher up the tree. Shinto was also very surprised, but thought it would take at least a couple of months for a policeman to do this. Guys understanding that because of the guilt that his ally died, most likely the cop was able to quickly learn the jump. Shinto that the guy not only learned how to use his legs, he also improved his circulation of power in his body. Now the guys thought he was capable. 2 guys started attacking the cop, but he easily rolled away from them. Already at night, the girl came to the house, and 1 man helped her find the house. He explained that they would have said all within a 15-kilo radius. Based on and her last place, Diane fought. The house has been empty for years, but recently the house got electricity. It is also suspiciously the only house in the mountain. The girl offered to go look. But a guy stopped her and told her to wait, because the White Serpent had sent a group of people here. But the girl reminded him that the White Serpent was standing below her. Then the girl decided to go inside the house. Well, at one point, the policeman himself appeared behind the girl. He said he woke up when he heard a rat squeaking. The girl tried to attack the policeman, but successfully returned. Also, when the girl again got caught attacking him, she noticed that he became much faster than before. The guys started fighting at one point. The policeman revealed his white aura body. The girl herself was sure the guy could catch her, but he replied that she wasn't the only one so fast. The next thing he could find was a punch right to the face. Also, next attack, he pinned the girl to the ground. She threw the girl again, and she hit the wall. But for some reason, the girl was calm enough to put it down and noticed that she hadn't been beaten like that in a long time. She also noticed that the guy had become much more dangerous since they last saw each other, and she'd better kill him before he got even more dangerous, just like she did with the white demon. Well, the cop told her he'd kill her, just like she did him, and she shouldn't say his name. Girl moment moved with over a guy and swept up for what the president told her to bring him back alive too, but she's just gonna kill him. Then Poison Han and Shinto heard a noise outside and went out there. The first thing they saw was that they had already been found, and the girl and the policeman started fighting. Poison he wanted to go help, but Shinto stopped him and also thought it was a better opportunity to test the policeman's skills. The girl didn't really want to exert herself, but she had to use her white aura. Therefore, it was able to attack multiple parties at the same time. Shinto, that girl is so fast, and she's very good at controlling her strength. To use her legs like that. She kept attacking the guy. Poison Hong said he can't watch it anymore. At this rate, a policeman could be killed, but Shinto asked him to give him a few minutes. The girl was around the guy. He was able to catch her and would strike her in the head again, and she could only wonder how you managed to realize she must be too fast for him. She realized she had to leave, and she promised she'd be back soon. But the policeman didn't want to let her go so quickly, so he grabbed her head and pinned her to the ground. The only thing the cop asked for was his mate back, and the last time the girl said she wasn't killed. When the other faction arrived, they saw the dead girl. No one could believe she'd been defeated. The manager wanted to piss off the cop, so he told him to attack. But Purely Head only pondered Whitesnake. He realized that to her, the fly guy gave the girl means he would be a strenuous opponent of laziness. Besides, he was not alone. A Whitesnake for how much the manager could become strong, and under Saisuke as well. He needs to take all the necessary precautions, so he ordered the human team to screw the manager. All the guys started fighting. The manager was the first to receive the storage, and he was also very much surprised since when the wrestler was able to be so fast. The policeman covered himself with a white aura, which even surprised the manager. Where did he get that white aura from? Also, an extension from them, White Treason began to fight with Poisonous under. The Whitesnake lapped the guy to retire and was ready not to strike. But Poison Holtz could now a cunning bloke and everything hit him. First, also Shinto fought with the rest of the guys. The policeman reminded the manager something. Yes, he asked to keep the chief alive. The boys started fighting again. The manager wondered why a guy like the cop could have so much power for a moment, but failed to grab the policeman to start choking him. Because of this, the venomous Han got distracted and the white snake was able to pierce it with its fingers. Then at one point the manager approved the death of a police officer. But suddenly he realized that the boy had gathered his own power from him. The manager didn't understand why he was so frightened since he couldn't even move now. The manager said that they are now equal to the request, but the policeman replied that even if they were equal now, then he would win because of his skills and experience gained during training. Then the guy asked the cop what skills he meant, but in place of an answer he got a grip on his body, and the next attack plus Saisuke hit him in the head and also dropped him. Huang saw that the manager was overcome. Then his poisonous Hoon asked him what the guy did now since it was his only hope. The policeman was ready to strike the manager. He's going to hell. Whitesnake understood that the president was right. It was the policeman who was rubbish, and he was the biggest threat to their organization. But for some reason he fainted. The guys asked the policeman not to worry because they'll deal with the rest on their own. Well, out of nowhere they got knives, and they recognized the blades straight away. It was their ally, one of the 4 lunatics. The girl ordered her boys to surround the boys. Shinto realized that they were in a bad position. The girl herself is very strong, not to mention so many opponents. The girl herself remarked that she selected them personally, and the guys should take that as a sign of respect. The girl started attacking the guys, and she even had a white aura. Honda tried to explain himself, that he had no choice but to run. Toto had to get away alive, to get revenge on the president. Shinto suggested an idea. He can distract the girl. Poison Han should take the policewoman and run away from here. It's too late for them to get out alive. The girl also tried to attack the guys, but they were successfully able to parry the attacks. But at one point, Shinto was shot in the leg. Shinto again asked the poisonous Han to just run away. But the guy decided he'd rather die than run away again. He decided to end it himself, and the guy should take the cop and get out of here. The girl herself remarked that it was a great idea since she would be honored to die by her blades. Only Shinto wanted to run away. The white snake policeman must not do so. The policeman woke up and saw a picture of 2 of his allies being very wounded, and after that he got very angry. He's not going to stand by and watch them get killed. He was covered in a white aura again. The cop started dealing with the guys. Poison Han was very surprised he defeated the girl and also killed the manager, and he still had some strength left. He realized that with that kind of tamimi, he would probably die. The girl herself didn't realize since when she was now showing her excitement. She wanted to attack him with her blade, but it was the policeman himself who was exposed to the blades. The guys realized they had spent too many resources, each had wounds, and each had lost but strength. Only the white serpent ordered the squad to attack the boys. The girl herself came to their defense and said that she would kill the poisonous Khan herself. And she killed her own unit. The white serpent agreed with this, so he said you would wait for her not far from here. Poisonholes asked his girlfriend why she was with the president. What happened that night? The night he dumped her and ran away, all she could think about was killing the guy. Poison Han didn't mind sacrificing herself if it would help calm her anger, but for some reason she stopped right in front of the guy's face. The girl orders the guy to just leave. He could keep pretending he'd changed, but she didn't care, and she just didn't want to get her hands dirty. She realized the president would probably kill him, and the cop would probably live like a lab rat for the rest of his life. Already in the car, the manager was able to pay one guy, so he was able to resurrect. Already in the flat, the guys were treating themselves. Poison honked at him that even if the girl left, the 4-eyed man might be back soon. The question is how long it would take for him to wake up. And even with his relatable ability to organize, the lad was sure he was affected. A girl and a guy fighting at the same time was no joke. Shinto realized he couldn't run properly. Then he offered to leave him in the fight. But Poison Han realized there was no need to fight. They can't hide in the city, where there are many people. Already in the office, White Snake and the manager were sitting discussing how the girl let the guys go, and White Snake didn't know how to tell the chairman. Well, the boys got word that I could find the cop and his friends in town. They were in the flat themselves, treating their own. The policeman noticed something was wrong. He couldn't feel his glia. Poison Han explained that it could only be if he had used it many times. The policeman couldn't believe it had been 2 days, but it hadn't recovered yet. Shinto asked that if they find them and they come here, he should be left behind, regardless of whether he dies. It's better than all of them together. But he was asked not to talk rubbish. He would live and come back again and start begging on the street. The cops were told that it's possible his Gilia could still be leveling up, but his aura is already white, which means he's Omega level. But he hasn't heard of anyone going any higher. The guys saw through the window that they were being followed. The guys decided to leave the Shinto, which was one option to survive. The white kite asked the guys why the others weren't getting out of the car. As he got into the car, he saw that the two guys were completely and utterly dried out. The manager was able to grab the white snake's grip and strangle it, called himself in charge. The manager was able to suck all the power out of the white snake. Poison Han promised that he would return and let Shinto avenge what he did to him in the past. The boys ran out the window, and they then decided to get lost in the crowd. It was to their advantage. Already the girls have reported that the boys have been found in the city, and there's likely to be a poisonous Chan. Then she informed her subordinate that they would be moving there now. Already in the city itself, the boys were again met by some squad and started fighting with them. The policeman himself realized that he still couldn't use his power. At one point the police came. They asked people to disperse. A man from the Purple Moon organization ordered a policeman out of here. A while later, it was already evening. Poison Han saw that the policeman still couldn't fight. He can't even shoulder a child now. But then the manager came out of nowhere. The first person the manager hit was a poisonous Han. It penetrated what the policeman should do. After all, he still can't use his power. Then the manager went over to the policeman and grabbed him by the throat. He said he could quickly pay with all his strength and he wouldn't even feel a thing. The manager did so. He paid the full force of the policeman. But he couldn't believe he could win. He didn't realize how much he'd been tormented by that weakling all this time. All the guy had to do was beat a cop to death. But at one point my evenings were thrown off by the sheer amount of energy. Poison Han thanked the manager. He was able to unlock the guy's power. The manager remarked that only the amount of glia that is now in the policeman he had never felt her. In an instant, the eye of the policeman struck the manager, which even blew his head off. A policeman feels like he just met this prick for the first time yesterday, and he lost all his colleagues at the police station. An old acquaintance of the poisonous Hoon showed up. She was just flying in as the guys were killing. The girl offered to bring a policeman to the president. He evaluates people only on their abilities. He'll take them. Poison Han didn't want to hear that. After all, she herself knows very well that they won't agree to it. He's only willing to see the president if he comes to kill him. The boys started fighting again. Poison Han fell to his knees. He was wounded again very badly, but he realized that this was still the end. The girl promised something to kill him right now. The girl was attacked by the policeman himself. First, she tried to drop knives to disarm him, but he was able to dodge with the most poisonous Chan technique. That's what the girl noticed. He was able to give it to her, but she was even more discharged because she didn't understand how a guy could use someone else's technique and what right he had to do it. The most venomous Han realized that the situation was now going in the wrong direction. The policeman had used up all his energy, and in that state, he'd die if a single knife hit him. The girl herself wanted to drink all the police blood before she went to the president. Ammonia's policeman was trapped, and he died. Only in his defense was the poisonous one himself, who covered himself from the knives. With those words of venomous Han fucking what seems to be the end for him, the girl said what she didn't want to do. That's not what she wanted to do. She started beating the cop with her fists, and blamed it all on him. But suddenly the poisonous Han woke up and asked to let the policeman go. That was his last will and testament. The guy also apologized to the girl personally for leaving her behind. Die. He asked her to believe the words because they were sincere. From the moment he was born, she was the only one he'd ever loved. The girl cried. She realized that he always does things his own way. Even now he chose to die this way. It was standing in 2 feet, but he asked the sucker to leave. He and it have a dream to kill the president, to kill the monster. And he and the last hope to fulfill that dream. Then he has to go. He has to go and survive. And one day he can kill the president. Then the poisonous Honda also died. The policeman couldn't believe it. He asked the guy to open their eyes, and without him, the policeman had none left. Before the organization of the Purple Moon, 2 people appeared who didn't understand how sometimes the moon could tell them where to go and where not to go. The president also arrived. The guys didn't know what was going on at all, so they went to the president. He told them that the owners of the national companies, who are the leaders of the Korean company, had gathered here today. Director Taepyeong of the Financial Supervision Service, and President Hyun Seong. The reasons why he's assembled a leader in Korea is to unite and create a long-awaited business. Bogrova Moon is investing 1,000,000,001 from their private finance company to raise 100,000,000,000,000,000,000,001, which is 100 times the amount invested. One guy realized that this amount of money was comparable to the entire banking sector. It would completely change the financial industry. One asked if Red Moon Bank could raise capital. The president explained that their loyal customers who use their bank's services, as well as civilians who desperately need money but have had trouble getting loans, With the help of the Korean Ogran, they would be able to raise capital. The old man realized that the president was just going to rip off people who were already deep in debt to raise such a huge amount of money. The director of finance questioned the president Purple Moon. As he himself knows, under current banking law, the deposit limit of a commercial bank cannot exceed 10 times its capital. The president of Korea said that a special arrangement has been made with Red Moon Bank, which will temporarily allow the bank to have a deposit limit of 100 times its capital. The director did not understand how the president could make these decisions without discussing them with him. There will be an uproar among citizens, the press, and the opposition party. Well, President Crimson Moon calmed the guys down. No one will be able to make a fuss because there's no one in Korea over whom the organization has no power. Now that the issue of funds has been resolved, they should discuss who will borrow from them. First, the president wanted to offer each of the executives a loan of 20,000,000,001. The guys didn't know how they could handle such a large loan. Also, the president suggested that they just leave their shares as collateral. He can contact each of the executives individually about it. The old man started yelling at the president. He didn't understand how he could dare to behave like that. He said the president had come to hell. The president remarked that the old man himself is very talented, from automobiles and construction to shipbuilding. A businessman who turned his company from a small business into a huge organization. After many years, he still works day and night growing his company. But the president was told that the old man had a problem with the gray, so he killed him. The Korean president asked the chairman of the Hogmoon how he would deal with the aftermath because he had just killed the most important person in their country. But the president didn't understand what the guys were saying, seeing as the old man himself had just had a heart attack. As soon as the president of the Hogmoons wanted to ask the rest of the guys left people, they had questions for him, already flew a stone straight into his face. The policeman already wanted to fight. He was tearing the guards left and right. They're returning now. The president was able to get back from the rock. He was of course surprised that the policeman was able to come here on his own, if his side is even nice. The president suggested that the policeman shake their hand, and he will do it. Then he will become rich and gain power. The policeman replied that he didn't come here to hear that, and he wanted to hit the president for a moment, moved, and said that was stupid of the policeman, so he threw the guy to the ground. And his words were as he expected. The policeman stood up and wanted to strike the president, but he was able to parry and hit the policeman. The policeman got angry and said that the warm-up was over. He covered his body with a white aura. The president himself was surprised because he did not suspect that the guy could reach such a level. The guy started to fight, but still the cop's strength didn't go away. The president was able to use a black aura and stab the cop in the chest. The president advised the policeman to first learn to obey, but he doesn't worry about that. After all, the policeman's life would become a little more meaningful. He ordered his men to carry the policeman carefully. The president of Korea looked at the policeman. He first thought that the policeman could defeat the president, but he was disappointed in him. Again, a huge amount of white aura overtook the policeman. The policeman's aura took on a physical form for which he could even throw and impale the guys. The president realized that the policeman did not give him any other choice, but he sincerely hoped that he had failed to network in his views. Then the president fired a black projectile, which impaled the cop. Only the president wanted to finish the cop off. A young woman came to his defense. She explained that Poison Hoon was trying to protect this guy, that he asked the president not to hurt him. The president calmed the girl down and explained that he wasn't going to hurt him. After all, he only wanted his blood. With her help, the Crimson Moon will rule the world. The girl realized that there was merit in starting to attack first, but he was able to easily block her knives and start advancing. Only the girl wanted to dodge behind her. The president appeared, who started beating her. She thought it was the end. But she didn't press the defense. A policeman stood up and grabbed the president by the waist. The president warned the policeman that if he did not stop near him, he would have no choice but to kill the policeman. The policeman came my girlfriend. She took the regret with her bare hands. She thought she could finish it herself. The president got discharged. He started killing everyone around him. The director's assistant. As soon as the president turned back from the policeman, he saw that he already had a black aura. After that, he immediately rushed the president and even managed to wound his face. The policeman himself realized that he probably had a chance, because the president is just as human and vulnerable. The girl was watching this fight. She saw that the policeman was very quickly getting stronger and stronger, and he was beginning to surpass the president. The policeman realized that he could now get the president himself with his fists. The president himself was beginning to recognize the guy. He was able to reach his level too, but he shouldn't get overconfident. A policeman started beating the president. The girl herself watched it and said it was an amazing fight. The policeman's punches are working on the president, so the policeman had more energy. The president used a technique with which he created multiple projectiles. All together failed to activate and impaled the policeman in many places. The president never thought he'd ever have to go to the trouble of fighting a kid, so he gives him a quick death. The president grabs the kid by the throat and says he had fun, but he's still weak. The girl couldn't believe it. She watched and didn't realize the end of the world. A policeman does not know how to control glia as well as the president. The policeman himself realized that his mind was going, and he seemed to be dying. Already in his mind, he met his boss, who told the cop he was sorry for what happened. There was also a doctor who spoke to the guy. They didn't believe a cop could make it that far. They just assumed he could do it. The doctor was sorry to come back like that if they'd had a little more time. A white demon showed up, said they put too big a burden on him. And there was also a poisonous Han who started arguing with his mate. The boys realized that the policeman had done enough. Having come all this way on his own 2 feet, he didn't back down one bit. Each police officer promised she would come back and apologize. The president wanted to kill the president of Korea. A gun was pointed at him. But then, there's the fear of the policeman himself, who looked as if nothing had happened to him. A power the cop didn't believe in all along is becoming clearer and clearer to him. From the days when he was beaten and grew stronger to the days when he trained with his masters, the president didn't realize what the aura around the policeman was. He had never seen such an aura before. What the president said is he wants to fix this nation, and a policeman shouldn't stand in his way. Brainless politicians, the rich, and the media abusing their ignorance. He wanted to fix everything. But at one point, a cop stabbed the president in the chest with the most tremendous speed. Time passed. The girl approached the policeman. She could not believe that from that day on, he felt more of his power. But now the guy was working, so he couldn't talk to her. On some street, an old man was about to be beaten up for borrowing money, but then our policeman showed up, who warned the bandit that if he made any more threats, he'd die. The policeman continued to do his job, and behind him sat all those who were with him. The story I retold today has a fascinating plot. This story is about the struggle between the forces of a powerful organization that has enormous influence on the political and social environment, and the government that is trying to resist it. Using Ryu Si-hwan's blood to create a cure adds an interesting element to the plan to fight against the Red Moon. Such a story can explore themes of power, control, ethics, and technological progress. As the main character in this story, Ryu Si-hwan is able to discover his power and influence in a situation where he is seen as a key element in the fight against the Red Moon. Additionally, exploring the morality and ethics of using blood or any other resource to achieve goals can add depth to the story. What emotions or conflicts might be plaguing Ryu Si-hwan as his blood is used to create a cure? What dramatic twists might emerge in the struggle between the government and the Red Moon? Sure, let's breathe life into this potential plot. Ryu Si-hwan must have mixed emotions about using his blood to create a cure. On the one hand, he realizes that his blood may be the key to breaking the Red Moon's influence and saving many people. However, he also worries that his personal life and intimate data are becoming part of the political game and the struggle for power. At the same time, the struggle between the government and the Red Moon flares up to a new level. An organization accustomed to control and manipulation begins to strenuously resist government attempts to destroy its influence. History can become full of intrigue, betrayal, and unexpected alliances. Some members of the Red Moon organization may realize the threat and begin to act on their own, coming to compromises with the government or even betraying their colleagues in order to survive. Perhaps one of the key characters believed to be loyal to the Red Moon suddenly switches sides, causing even more chaos in the struggle for power and control. What specific turns will the plot take, and how will the main characters cope with these challenges? It depends on how you see this exciting story unfolding. Sure, let's see how the action might unfold. As the fight between the government and Red Moon intensifies, Ryu Si-hwan realizes that he is becoming a key factor in this confrontation. He finds himself at the center of political intrigue, and his identity becomes the object of manipulation, both by the government and by members of the Red Moon organization. With every step Ryu Si-hwan takes, he faces difficult moral choices. His blood is being used to create a cure that could be the key to destroying the Red Moon, but he realizes it could also lead to new forms of abuse and control. On the other hand, the Red Moon members realize that their influence is under threat. They begin to use all their resources, including their own secret technology and network of allies, to stop the development of a cure. At this time, the rifts within the Red Moon organization itself become more noticeable. Some members begin to question the organization's methods and goals, leading to division and possible changes in course of events. The plot may culminate in an epic confrontation between the government-backed Ryu Si-hwan and the remaining Red Moon members. And perhaps it is at this moment that the main characters will see that the solution to the problem does not always lie in a simple winner or defeat, but in finding a compromise and new ways for peace and justice. This is where our story comes to an end. If you want to see a continuation, then subscribe to the channel and write comments.